black woman told to use economy line. Turns out she's the new director of operations. A single moment of injustice can echo louder than a lifetime of quiet endurance. When Amara Johnson found herself standing in that neon-lit lobby, being coldly directed to the economy line by a stranger's dismissive voice, she tasted a bitterness she had known her whole life, yet could never fully swallow. The onlooker's eyes flickered from Amara to the sign, reading VIP services, before landing on the man who presumed she did not belong. Little did anyone know that Amara wasn't just another traveler. She was there to take over as the new director of operations. This story begins like so many others, but it ends very differently. Amara Johnson woke early on a crisp Monday morning in Atlanta, Georgia, her nerves jangling like loose change in a pocket. She pulled aside the thick curtains of her modest apartment, letting a blade of golden sunrise pierce the darkness. The day had finally arrived, her first day as the new director of operations for Fairbanks Consolidated, one of the largest transport and logistics companies in the country. This position was more than a job. It was the culmination of years of sacrifice, ambition, and strategic maneuvers. For as long as she could remember, Amara had been told to wait patiently in the shadows, at first by teachers who expected little from her, later by university professors who believed she was bright but unremarkable, and eventually by employers who saw her potential but never gave her the opportunities to fully flourish. She had learned to be patient, but she had also cultivated an unwavering drive. Every late-night study session, every underpaid internship, every volunteer leadership role, each was a brick in the foundation she was building for herself. Now, at 34, Amara was about to step into a role that commanded real authority. The notion both exhilarated and terrified her. Dressing was a ritual to quell her nerves. She meticulously pressed her navy blue skirt suit and arranged her hair in a neat protective style that both honored her heritage and exuded professionalism. Her reflection in the mirror showed a poised, intelligent black woman. She took a moment to breathe in and out, centering herself. In just a few hours she would stand before the entire operations team, a group of hundreds scattered across the country, managing everything from supply lines to distribution chains. The job description carried dizzying responsibilities, but Amara was ready. She had no time for self-doubt. She stepped outside and caught a ride to Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. Having to travel on her very first day was unusual, but the position required her to visit the company's headquarters in Denver. Coincidentally, Fairbanks Consolidated had also planned a leadership conference in Denver that same week, offering Amara the opportunity to meet many of the company's senior managers at once. The arrangement was ideal. Amara had purchased a first-class ticket on Delta Airlines, courtesy of the relocation bonus the company had provided. For once, she would experience a taste of luxury. Yet, Amara's optimism was tested the moment she arrived at the airport. The check-in counter was packed, lines snaking around stanchions, frustration and exhaustion palpable in the stale air-conditioned atmosphere. Cries of tired children, the grumbles of business travelers, and the crackling overhead announcements melded into a chaotic orchestra. Amara noted the sign for premium check-in labeled First Class and 6IP Services and walked toward it. She showed her boarding pass to an attendant, a tall young man in a crisp red Delta vest whose name tag read Travis. He gave her a once-over, eyes darting from Amara's face to her suit and then to the thick handle of her carry-on. With a sigh, he pointed down the hall. "Economy line is that way." For a moment, Amara thought he was directing someone else. She glanced behind her, but saw nobody close enough to be addressed. She turned back. "Excuse me." Travis rolled his eyes. "Economy line is down there," he repeated more insistently. "Premium check-in is only for first-class passengers." A wave of tension clutched her stomach. Amara knew this routine. The quick dismissal, the assumption that she did not belong, the immediate labeling of her as an intruder. She felt a quiet fury flicker, but tried to keep her voice even. "I have a first-class ticket, actually." Travis's eyebrows arched, then drew together. "Let me see it," he demanded skeptically. He scanned her ticket, and his expression transformed into that tight, forced smile. "Ah, well, you'll need to wait just a second, Miss Johnson," he said with barely concealed annoyance. Standing there, Amara felt her heart race. The same scenario had played out in countless ways, in banks, in upscale stores, even at job fairs. Being told where you didn't belong was an all too familiar refrain. Yet Amara didn't let her composure slip. She had a plane to catch, and her new journey was only beginning. A short while later, Amara finally made it through check-in and security. She took her seat in the first-class lounge. As she settled into a comfortable chair, she sipped a glass of complimentary orange juice and forced herself to breathe. She could still feel the tension from that encounter, the way Travis treated her like an imposter. She pushed the memory aside. Today was not about the small-mindedness of strangers. Today was about reclaiming her rightful place. Landing in Denver, Amara felt a thrill, despite the crisp air biting at her cheeks as she stepped outside the airport terminal. A company car awaited her, a sleek black sedan, with Fairbanks consolidated in small lettering on the side door. The driver, a pleasant older man named Gene, introduced himself and helped with her luggage. "Welcome to Denver, Miss Johnson," he said politely, offering no trace of the suspicion or condescension she had just endured a few hours earlier. As they drove toward her new corporate apartment, Amara couldn't help watching the skyline approach, tall buildings standing against the striking backdrop of the Rocky Mountains. A swirl of anticipation and nervousness caught in her chest. She was stepping into foreign territory, both literally and figuratively. Fairbanks Consolidated had arranged a hotel suite for the first week, while Amara finalized the lease on her new apartment. Jean explained that the annual leadership conference was happening at the Ritz-Carlton, Denver, a real, well-known hotel brand that Fairbanks often used for events. Amara's attendance was expected. She would be introduced, ironically enough, as the new director of operations, possibly to many who had never even heard her name. This was by design. Her hiring had been quietly orchestrated by the CEO himself, David Fairbanks, to sidestep office politics and sabotage from rival department heads. Once at the Ritz-Carlton, Amara checked in under her name. The front desk receptionist, a woman with a professional smile, recognized her from a pre-registered 6IP list. "We have you in the grand suite, Miss Johnson. Would you like assistance with your bags?" Amara agreed, but couldn't help noticing a few side glances from guests in the lobby, her formal suit, her being there alone, maybe the fact that a bellhop was whisking her luggage away. She had grown accustomed to these sidelong stares. The experiences in Amara's life had taught her that unspoken judgments were as thick as the air in any upscale setting. The suite was lavish, floor-to-ceiling windows, plush carpets, and an unobstructed view of the Denver skyline. She let out a low whistle of amazement. It was a far cry from the modesty of her one-bedroom apartment in Atlanta. Still, Amara wasn't here to be awed. She was here to lead. After freshening up, she headed to the conference rooms on the third floor, where the leadership event was already in full swing. Nerves churned in her stomach as Amara pushed open the ornate double doors, leading into a hall buzzing with well-dressed men and women. The atmosphere was a mixture of forced pleasantries, clinking glassware, and the hush of private conversations. She spotted a buffet table near the back, with a line forming for coffee and pastries. Amara inhaled deeply and approached. She was half a step into the room when she heard a nasal voice call out, "New face! You must be one of the interns. Coffee lines that way." The speaker was a middle-aged woman with an inflated sense of self. Her name badge read Margaret Walton, followed by Senior Logistics Coordinator. Amara stiffened momentarily, then decided to handle it gracefully. She walked over and extended her hand, ignoring the woman's smirk. "Amara Johnson," she said, "Director of Operations." For a split second, Margaret's face registered shock. Then, like Travis at the airport, she plopped a well-rehearsed grin onto her face. "Oh yes, Miss Johnson, of course. We'd heard there was a new hire." "Pleased to meet you." Amara recognized the type immediately, someone who believed that prestige was limited to a select few, and Amara had clearly not been pre-approved. The fleeting satisfaction of that moment of setting the record straight didn't fully erase the sting of being mislabeled yet again. Nevertheless, Amara navigated the crowd, introducing herself to a variety of managers and VPs. She met Helena from marketing, who was gracious and enthusiastic about Amara's background. She briefly chatted with Mark from it, who seemed genuinely curious about Amara's vision for bridging technology and logistics. An hour passed in a flurry of polite small talk and repeated introductions. Amara was polite, professional, and direct, letting people see only what she wanted them to see for now. Finally, a broad-shouldered figure stepped through the door. David Fairbanks himself. Amara recognized him from the press releases, tall, silver-haired, with a calm but commanding presence. Spotting her, he waved her over. "There's the new Director of Operations," he said warmly. "Amara, I'm glad you made it safely." They shook hands. Amara felt relief flood her chest at the open regard in his eyes. "It's a pleasure to finally meet you in person," she said. She meant it. Over video calls and phone meetings, David had come across as someone who believed in her abilities. Standing face to face confirmed that impression. He had personally recruited her for this role after receiving glowing recommendations from Amara's previous employer, where Amara had, ironically, never made it past senior manager because the next rung on the ladder kept not opening up. David guided Amara to a smaller, more private lounge area. There, a select group of high-level executives were mingling. He introduced Amara to each person in turn. "This is Vanessa Diaz, CFO. This is Jacques Pierre, our head of international development," and so on. The initial awkwardness Amara felt upon entering the large conference hall gave way to genuine excitement. These were the power players, the people who could shape the future of Fairbanks Consolidated. And she was one of them now. Yet Amara could not ignore an undercurrent of skepticism in some of their eyes. It was not universal. Vanessa Diaz, for instance, was entirely welcoming, but others looked Amara up and down as though calculating how her presence might disrupt the status quo. She had come to expect this. She vowed silently, "This will change." She would prove her worth. As the evening ended, Amara found herself alone in the hotel hallway, thinking through the day's events. She could almost hear the echo of Travis's dismissive words at the airport and Margaret's assumption that she was an intern. She let the memory settle, then vanish. It would take more than prejudice to derail her. With quiet determination, she returned to her suite, ready to begin the next day of the conference and the next chapter in her career. Early the next morning, Amara dressed in a charcoal grey pantsuit, determined to exude confidence and command. Heading downstairs, she joined the other executives in one of the Ritz-Carlton's opulent ballrooms, decked out in gold and cream drapery, with a podium at the front. This was day 2 of the leadership conference, featuring panels and presentations. Amara was slated to speak near the end of the morning session. The schedule posted outside the ballroom read 9 a.m. opening remarks by CEO David Fairbanks, 9:15 a.m. key performance indicators with CFO Vanessa Diaz, 10 a.m. global market trends with head of international development Jacques Pierre, 10:45 a.m. operations and efficiency A new perspective, Amara Johnson, Director of Operations, she was well prepared. She had spent the previous night polishing her PowerPoint slides to highlight a bold new approach to streamlining supply chains and adopting advanced software solutions. She believed in the power of synergy between technology and human expertise, a synergy that could modernize Fairbanks Consolidated's entire structure. At 9 a.m., David Fairbanks delivered his remarks. His calm, measured voice filled the room. Vanessa Diaz followed with a concise overview of the company's financial position. Then Jacques Pierre captivated the audience with intriguing insights about expansion into emerging markets. Amara's palms grew clammy as her turn approached. She had spoken at conferences before, but never as a director in front of peers who were, in some cases, older, more experienced, and possibly resentful of her rapid rise. When the MC finally announced her, Amara strode to the podium. The crowd was large, about 200 managers and executives from across the country, plus a few streaming in virtually. She paused to survey the audience, letting the hush wash over her. "Good morning," she began, voice steady but warm. "My name is Amara Johnson, and I'm honored to stand before you as Fairbanks Consolidated's new Director of Operations." She clicked to her first slide, which read, "Efficiency through unity." "I believe in the power of teamwork, data-driven strategy, and forging strong alliances within and outside our organization." As she continued, Amara introduced the concept of an integrated operations framework, one that would merge real-time data analytics with the experience and creativity of on-the-ground staff. She outlined how Fairbanks Consolidated could reduce costs by 15% and boost productivity if they aligned departments that traditionally operated in silos. She spoke in plain language, avoiding corporate jargon, using compelling visuals and telling real-world anecdotes to illustrate her points. Her energy was palpable, and the audience leaned forward, drawn into her vision. Yet Amara noticed, toward the back, a small group of middle-aged executives who seemed unimpressed. One of them whispered to the other, rolling his eyes. Amara recognized Margaret Walton among them. Were they the old guard, threatened by new blood? She pressed on, unfazed. She concluded her talk to polite but somewhat reserved applause. David Fairbanks was the first to stand, giving Amara a gentlemanly smile that suggested sincere approval. Jacques Pierre and Vanessa Diaz followed, along with many others. Margaret Walton offered a cursory clap, expression unreadable. After the session, Amara stood near the podium as a line of curious staff and managers approached her with questions or compliments. She was explaining her thoughts on how to handle potential supply chain disruptions when she heard an unmistakable, haughty voice behind her. "Well, that was ambitious," Margaret commented. "Just loud enough for Amara to hear. I suppose we'll see how feasible it is to implement." Amara turned calmly. "I understand your concerns," she replied. "I've run the numbers and I'd be happy to walk you through them." Margaret pursed her lips and sidled away. Amara knew she had just made an enemy, or at least encountered a major skeptic. She reminded herself that this was part of the job. Not everyone would embrace change willingly. By midday, Amara was drained from the constant socializing and the mental energy needed to remain poised. At lunch, the staff was treated to a buffet in a smaller ballroom. Amara grabbed a salad and found a table with a few people from marketing and it who had welcomed her earlier. The conversation was light, drifting from personal hobbies to favorite places in Denver. That was when Amara overheard two men from another table discussing her. She caught phrases like fast track and it's all for show. Her cheeks burned and she had to bite her lip to keep from interjecting. This wasn't new to her. She knew that some people believed she had been hired to fulfill a diversity quota. She also knew that many would never believe she was here on merit. Her entire life had been a practice in ignoring such doubts, but that didn't make the pain any less acute. In the afternoon, Amara had back-to-back meetings. She attended a breakout session on technology integration with Mark from it, who was excited about Amara's synergy ideas. During their discussion, Amara learned that the company had purchased a cutting-edge logistics software suite but had never fully implemented it because each department was reluctant to overhaul their existing systems. Amara saw an immediate opportunity. If she could streamline the adoption of that software, it might be the perfect starting point for unifying the entire operation. She took notes eagerly, fueling her determination to prove her worth through measurable success. In a short time, Amara planned to launch an internal pilot program, focusing on key distribution centers in major cities like Chicago and Los Angeles. The results would speak for themselves. She just needed to get buy-in from David Fairbanks and the relevant department heads. And there lay the friction. By the conference's end, Amara knew the real work would begin when she stepped into the role at the corporate offices. She had glimpsed rivalries, entrenched hierarchies, and the silent politics that shaped daily life at Fairbanks Consolidated. But she also saw allies, people eager for change. She had no illusions. Transforming the operations wouldn't be easy, and prejudice would be just one of the hurdles. But Amara was ready. On Monday morning, Amara set foot in the sprawling glass-walled headquarters of Fairbanks Consolidated in downtown Denver. The building was sleek and modern, featuring a grand lobby with polished floors, tall potted plants, and a large silver globe symbolizing the global reach of the company. At the security desk, Amara was welcomed by a friendly guard who handed her an official ID badge. "Welcome, Director Johnson," he said, beaming in a way that put Amara at ease. Once the elevator doors opened onto the executive floor, Amara was greeted by her new administrative assistant, Camilla Reyes, a young woman with bright eyes and an air of efficiency. Camilla led Amara through a maze of corridors until they reached her corner office. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked downtown Denver, with the Rockies in the distance. Amara's nameplate was already affixed to the door. Amara Johnson, Director of Operations. She stepped inside, momentarily overwhelmed by the magnitude of the space. The office was comfortably furnished with a large wooden desk, a conference table, and a plush sitting area. A few carefully chosen abstract artworks broke up the polished minimalism. Amara set her purse down, placing her hands on the desk to ground herself. This was the seat of her newfound power. Her first day was filled with orientation meetings and personal introductions. She had a formal welcome session with the entire operations team, some 70 people crowded into a large conference room. The applause when she entered was polite but subdued. Amara delivered a short address, thanking them for the opportunity to collaborate and promising to maintain open lines of communication. She kept it brief. Actions would matter more than words. After the meeting, she moved from cubicle to cubicle, greeting those who were not in management positions. Some seemed genuinely glad to meet her, others wore polite, guarded expressions. The day passed in a blur. Amara found herself juggling phone calls with regional managers, aligning schedules and planning her first official initiative, fully deploying the advanced logistics software that had been gathering dust. She set up a core team to spearhead the pilot program. High on her list of priorities was establishing trust, especially with those who had doubts about her leadership. She believed that if she could collaborate with them, hear their concerns, and propose fair solutions, she might win them over. Late in the afternoon, Amara met with Vanessa Diaz, the CFO, to discuss budget allocations. Vanessa was enthusiastic about Amara's plan and provided a list of financial guidelines. The two women clicked immediately, bonding over their experiences rising through male-dominated fields. Amara was grateful for this rapport. Having the CFO on her side was vital for any large-scale operational changes. In the midst of conversation, Vanessa apologized for the bias Amara might have already experienced from certain corners of the company. "I'm rooting for you," Vanessa said firmly. "You have my support." Later, Amara received an unexpected visitor, Margaret Walton. Margaret swept into the office with the same haughty air Amara remembered from the conference. She wore a crisp blouse and pencil skirt, her hair impeccably styled. She offered a forced smile that never reached her eyes. "I wanted to discuss the new software initiative," Margaret said, scanning the room as if it were her own territory. "My team is under logistics, and we haven't been consulted about these changes." Amara maintained her composure. "I apologize if there was a breakdown in communication," she replied evenly. "The plan is still in the early stages. I'll be creating a cross-departmental team, and I hope you'll be part of it." Margaret crossed her arms. "Well, I hope you realize that we have procedures in place. We can't just uproot everything overnight because of some new, untested methodology." Amara gestured for her to sit, but Margaret remained standing. Undeterred, Amara responded politely, "I understand. That's why we're starting with a pilot program. We want data to guide our decisions. I'll be sure to include you each step if you'd like to participate." Their conversation ended with Margaret nodding curtly and leaving abruptly. Amara let out a sigh. Margaret's opposition felt personal, but Amara refused to be intimidated. She had confronted tougher battles in her life than a prickly co-worker. As the week rolled on, Amara immersed herself in the intricacies of Fairbanks Consolidated, analyzing supply chain metrics, identifying bottlenecks, conferring with region-specific managers. She discovered that some of them, like Corey from Chicago and Alyssa from Los Angeles, were open-minded and forward-thinking. They embraced Amara's approach to modernization. Others were more resistant, clinging to the status quo. Still, Amara persevered, seeing glimmers of progress in the collaborative spirit slowly growing. One evening, Amara stayed late, her desk lamp the only glow in the darkened executive corridor. She was reviewing an exhaustive report on shipping delays along the East Coast. The numbers confirmed her suspicion. The software's real-time tracking could have prevented many of the setbacks had it been implemented. Frustration and excitement mingled in her chest. She believed wholeheartedly that once the pilot program proved successful, the entire corporation would rally behind her leadership. She was determined to make it happen. As she was about to shut down her computer, Amara noticed an email from an unknown address. The subject line read, "You don't belong here." Her heart froze. She clicked it open and a single line appeared. "We know why you were really hired. Don't think we won't expose you." Amara's stomach lurched. The email was unsigned. She leaned back in her chair, eyes narrowed. The message was blatant harassment, an attempt to shake her confidence. A wave of anger surged. Rather than succumb to fear, Amara saved the email as evidence. She stared out the window at the city lights, the dark silhouette of the mountains beyond. She told herself that no anonymous threat would derail her. If anything, it strengthened her resolve. But Amara realized something else, too. The hostility wasn't just about disliking her leadership style. It was about her identity, her race and her gender, all the intersections that made her who she was, but also painted a target on her back. She felt a weary sadness wash over her. Prejudice, it seemed, would never remain in the shadows for long. She clicked her desk lamp off, whispered to the quiet office, "I won't quit." Gathering her things, she walked out, determined to champion her vision for herself and for everyone who saw in her a reflection of their own dreams. A month into her tenure, Amara's pilot program was in full swing. She had rallied a diverse group of managers and staff from Chicago and Los Angeles distribution centers to test the advanced logistics software. Their early results were promising. Shipment times dropped, errors decreased, and for the first time, Amara felt the team uniting around a common goal. Word of success traveled quickly through Fairbanks Consolidated. Amara's name came up in water-cooler talk as someone genuinely trying to improve operations. She noticed more smiles in the hallways, nods of acknowledgement from colleagues who once avoided eye contact. Even so, not everyone was on board. Margaret Walton and her small clique continued to question Amara's every move, labeling the pilot as overhyped. The rumor mill churned with stories about Amara's supposed agenda. Then came the next blow. Amara discovered that someone had leaked incomplete pilot data to the company's internal forums, twisting the narrative to make it seem as if Amara's program was failing. The culprit remained unknown. The sabotage stung, especially because Amara had been cautious in sharing data. Only a handful of people had access to that information. But the partial data created confusion among employees and raised doubts about Amara's transparency. Despite her frustration, Amara remained calm in public. She instructed her team to compile the full, correct data and release an official update to the company's internal communications platform. This would clarify any misunderstanding. To Amara's relief, David Fairbanks stepped in, issuing a statement that praised Amara's leadership. "We stand by our Director of Operations," he wrote. "The pilot program's comprehensive results will speak for themselves." But Amara could not ignore the toxicity that was festering. She scheduled an urgent meeting with the company's HR director, Elaine Peterson, to discuss the harassing email and the sabotage. HR pledged to investigate, but Amara sensed Elaine's hesitation. Nobody wanted to stir the pot and create more internal tension at the higher echelons of management. Amara resolved not to let the matter drop. She forwarded all suspicious correspondence and documents to HR, asking them to keep her updated on any developments. In the meantime, Amara focused on forging stronger alliances. She had regular lunches with Mark from it, with Vanessa Diaz, and even with some of the regional managers visiting Denver. She listened to their concerns and perspectives, gleaning valuable insights into how the culture at Fairbanks consolidated functioned, who held sway, how departmental politics played out, which personal histories affected workplace dynamics. During one of these lunches, Amara found a surprising ally in a reserved older manager named Paul Bennett, who oversaw the Midwest region. Paul revealed that he was the first in his family to go to college, had faced class-based prejudice early in his career, and understood what it felt like to be an outsider. He warned Amara that her biggest challenge wouldn't be implementing new technology, it would be navigating the hidden power structures and prejudices within the company. "Technology can be tamed," he quipped. "Human hearts are a tougher frontier." Amara took his words to heart, deciding she would not just focus on processes, but also on people. She began holding team-building sessions, inviting staff from different levels and backgrounds to collaborate on problem-solving exercises. She led workshops that emphasized fairness, transparency, and mutual respect. It was part of Amara's broader strategy. If she could change the way people worked together, the rest of the operational improvements would follow more naturally. As progress in the pilot sites continued, Amara found herself traveling to Chicago and Los Angeles to see the new system in action. On-site visits gave her a chance to meet the teams face-to-face. She watched forklift operators scanning barcodes with the new tablets, enabling real-time inventory updates. She spoke with dispatchers who appreciated the streamlined scheduling interface. There were still kinks to work out, software glitches, occasional slowdowns, but overall, the staff embraced the changes because they saw tangible benefits. In Chicago, Amara spent an evening chatting with Corey's distribution center staff in the break room. The conversation turned casual, and Amara opened up about her own background, how she grew up in a working-class neighborhood in Atlanta, how she had juggled multiple part-time jobs while earning her degree, and how she'd been underestimated her entire life. The workers seemed surprised by her humility and authenticity. By the end of the night, Amara felt she had won over not just employees, but also supporters of her larger mission. Back in Denver, Amara's successes were becoming more visible. She was no longer the mystery hire. People recognized her in corridors, greeted her warmly, asked about her pilot's progress. For every skeptic in the building, Amara felt she was gaining two new allies. Yet an uneasiness nagged at her. Someone behind the scenes clearly wanted her gone. If they were willing to sabotage her data, what else might they try? That question loomed ominously as Amara prepared for a major presentation to the board of directors. The pilot's final data was in, and Amara wanted to show the board how they could expand the program company-wide, potentially saving millions of dollars in annual costs. Success would secure Amara's position and validate the months of effort she and her team had poured into the project. The meeting was scheduled for a Friday afternoon, a strategic time chosen by David Fairbanks, who believed the board would be more receptive heading into the weekend. Amara pored over slides, graphs, cost-benefit analyses, and employee testimonials, leaving no stone unturned. She knew the board was made up mostly of older men, some of whom might share the biases she had already encountered. On the day of the board meeting, Amara arrived early in a sharp black suit. Camilla helped set up the conference room, arranging printed handouts, connecting her laptop to the projector. David Fairbanks greeted Amara with a confident nod, and Vanessa Diaz gave a thumbs up from across the room. The atmosphere was tense, but Amara felt an undercurrent of support. The board members filed in, shaking hands and making small talk. Each took a seat around the large oval table, with Amara standing near the projector screen. David introduced her formally, praising her pilot's early achievements. Then Amara launched into her presentation, voice steady as she guided them through the slides. She explained how the new software improved accuracy, cut down on labor redundancies, and allowed for predictive analytics in supply chain management. Some of the older board members seemed skeptical at first, but Amara had prepared thoroughly. She answered their pointed questions with clarity, citing real data from the pilot distribution centers. By the end, the hesitation in the room had softened. Then came the final slide, an outline of the next steps to roll out the system nationwide. Amara concluded with a hopeful, confident note, "With your approval, we can lead the industry in operational excellence. The numbers are on our side. I firmly believe this is the best way forward for Fairbanks Consolidated." A pause filled the room as board members exchanged glances. One by one, they began to nod. A few offered cautious but positive remarks. David Fairbanks was beaming with pride. Vanessa Diaz looked relieved. Amara allowed herself a small smile. It seemed her efforts were about to pay off in a big way. But as the chairman of the board began to speak, Amara's phone, set to vibrate in her blazer pocket, buzzed urgently. Trying not to appear distracted, she glanced at the screen. A message from HR Director Elaine Peterson, reading urgent, "Please come to my office immediately after your meeting." Amara's heart skipped a beat. Something was happening. She had no choice but to wait until the board meeting concluded. For now, she locked her focus on the concluding remarks, ignoring the phone in her pocket. Even as the board members unanimously voted to authorize Amara's nationwide rollout of the new operational system, Amara's mind was racing, wondering what bombshell might be waiting for her at HR. After the applause and congratulations died down, Amara politely excused herself. She hurried through the halls, her adrenaline spiking. At Elaine's office, she found the door ajar. Elaine motioned her inside, face grim. "We have a situation," Elaine said tersely. "Margaret Walton has filed a formal complaint against you." Amara's heart pounded. "On what grounds?" Elaine hesitated, then handed Amara a folder. Inside was a typed statement from Margaret accusing Amara of abuse of power, discrimination against certain staff members, and manipulation of data. Amara's eyes widened in shock. "This is nonsense," she breathed. Elaine nodded sympathetically. "I believe you. But corporate policy means we have to launch a formal investigation. Margaret is claiming that you're singling her out and that your pilot data has been falsified to make you look good. She's also implying that you're using your status as a minority to intimidate those who disagree with you. The gravity of the moment pressed down on Amara's chest. She had just achieved her biggest triumph at Fairbank's consolidated approval from the board, and now an avalanche of accusations threatened to bury her success. She realized that the real battle was just beginning. Over the next week, Amara found herself trapped in a whirlwind of HR investigations, whispered rumors, and mounting tension. An official inquiry meant Amara had to place some of her normal duties on hold while she cooperated with HR. She was advised to delegate responsibilities to other managers, which felt both frustrating and humiliating. Margaret Walton's accusations loomed like a dark cloud, threatening to negate all the progress Amara had worked tirelessly to achieve. David Fairbanks, furious at the turn of events, met with Amara privately. "I know this is an attempt to derail you," he said, pacing the length of her office. "Your pilot results speak for themselves, but we have to let HR follow protocol." "I understand," Amara replied, struggling to keep emotion from her voice. "It's just disheartening. I've never falsified anything, and I certainly haven't discriminated against Margaret or anyone else." He pressed a reassuring hand to her shoulder. "We will get through this. Once HR clears you, we'll move forward with the rollout." But Amara could see the toll this was taking on him too. If a key manager like Margaret claimed Amara was abusing her power, the board might hesitate before fully implementing Amara's program. The entire future of the company's operations hung in the balance. To defend herself, Amara compiled an exhaustive trail of documentation emails, system logs, official communications proving the integrity of her data. Vanessa Diaz volunteered as a character witness, stating under oath that Amara had been transparent and ethical in all their dealings. Paul Bennett from the Midwest region came forward with a signed statement praising Amara's collaborative approach. Despite these efforts, the tension at headquarters rose. Margaret Walton was nowhere to be seen in Amara's presence, but Amara occasionally caught glimpses of her orchestrating hushed conversations with co-conspirators in the corridors. The rumor mill churned. Some said Amara's program was doomed, others said Amara was about to be fired, while a few insisted Amara was innocent. One evening, Amara returned to her office to find a typed note slipped under the door. The note read, "Quit while you still can." Amara's hands shook as she read it. The intimidation tactics were escalating. First an anonymous email, then leaked data, now a threatening note. Her entire being rebelled against the idea of quitting. She had worked too long, endured too much, to be chased out by bigotry and lies. Yet the strain weighed on her. At night, Amara struggled to sleep, her mind racing with worst-case scenarios. Dreams turned into nightmares, replaying scenes of public humiliation and the collapse of everything she had built. She felt fear creeping in but refused to surrender to it. Instead, Amara took action. She scheduled a confidential meeting with Elaine Peterson to present additional evidence. "I'm certain Margaret is behind more than just this complaint," Amara said. "The leaked pilot data, the threatening notes, it's not just a workplace dispute. It's personal, it's hateful." Elaine sighed, her face drawn. "We have reason to suspect Margaret is connected, but we can't prove it yet. The logs show that Margaret accessed the pilot data shortly before it was leaked, but she denies any involvement. Unless we catch her in a direct act of sabotage, it's all circumstantial." Amara shook her head, frustration mounting. "I won't let this go. If I have to hire a lawyer, I will. We can't let this environment fester. What if it happens to someone else?" Elaine looked pained. "Let's not jump to that yet. HR's investigation is ongoing. But Amara, please keep your guard up." Days stretched into a tense blur until one afternoon Amara received an unexpected visitor, Travis, the airport attendant who had once shooed her to the economy line, now dressed in a casual polo shirt. He asked to meet in private. Amara's heart fluttered with a strange mix of curiosity and lingering resentment. She had not forgotten their encounter. Inside Amara's office, Travis seemed nervous. He held a thick manila envelope. "Look, I know I messed up," he began, not meeting her eyes. "When I saw your face on the news, Fairbanks Consolidated's new director of operations, I remembered how rude I was to you at the airport. I felt horrible." Amara folded her arms, uncertain. "Why are you here now?" Travis took a breath. "I quit my job at Delta and applied for a customer service position here. I got it. I started, last week in the call center. Then I overheard some folks talking about you, saying all these awful things. Stuff I won't repeat. I can't stand that kind of hatred." He slid the envelope across the desk. Amara opened it cautiously. Inside were printed emails and screenshots of an internal messaging system. Her eyes darted across lines implicating Margaret Walton and a few others in orchestrating a campaign against Amara. The messages were vile, laced with racist and sexist insinuations, and spelled out a plan to sabotage Amara's position. Amara's stomach churned as she read. She glanced at Travis, speechless. "I have a friend in it," he explained. "They were investigating chatter on the internal servers. They came across these messages. My friend was afraid to bring them forward. He's on probation for a past incident, and he's worried about losing his job. But I'm not. I figured the least I could do was bring them to you." Amara felt tears sting her eyes, tears of relief, vindication, and anger. "This is what I needed," she whispered. "Travis, thank you. I owe you," he said simply. "I judged you at the airport, and I was wrong. This is my chance to make it right." Amara immediately called Elaine Peterson, who arrived in minutes. Together, they pored over the contents of the envelope. The messages contained detailed plans to undermine Amara, accusing her of discrimination, leaking or altering data, even planting unethical materials in her office. Margaret's name appeared repeatedly, along with that of a few co-conspirators. Elaine's eyes went wide. "This changes everything," she said. "We have concrete evidence now." Within hours, an emergency HR meeting was convened. David Fairbanks was notified, as were the legal department and corporate security. Margaret Walton and the others named in the documents were suspended, pending a full investigation. Amara felt a tremendous weight lift from her shoulders. She was no longer fighting a shadowy phantom. Margaret's malicious plot was finally exposed. That night, Amara sat alone in her office, gazing at the city lights. Her phone buzzed with a message from Travis. "I hope this helps. Sorry again for how I acted." Amara typed a brief reply. "Thank you for doing the right thing. It means more than you know." Hitting send, she let herself exhale. The storm wasn't over yet. Margaret would undoubtedly fight back, but Amara was no longer powerless. She had truth on her side. Within the next few days, corporate security and HR intensified their investigation. They confirmed the authenticity of the leaked emails and messages. More evidence emerged, some from additional co-workers who now felt safe to speak up. Margaret Walton's clique unraveled under scrutiny. Pressed by the mounting proof, a few involved parties admitted their roles. They claimed Margaret had spearheaded the entire campaign, exploiting their biases and fears about Amara's leadership. Margaret herself was called into a high-stakes meeting with HR, David Fairbanks, and legal representatives. According to people who witnessed her exit from the conference room, she emerged defiant but visibly shaken. Later that same day, Margaret was escorted out of the building by security, a public spectacle that left employees whispering and exchanging glances. The official memo released to all staff stated that Margaret Walton and 3 other individuals were terminated for gross misconduct, including harassment and attempts to sabotage company operations. In her office, Amara sat quietly, processing the news. She was grateful that justice had been served, but a part of her felt numb. The intense conflict had drained her emotionally. As she looked at her reflection in the window glass, she couldn't help reflecting on the many times she had been underestimated, insulted, or threatened just for being a black woman in a position of power. For every victory, it seemed, she endured a series of scars. A gentle knock interrupted her thoughts. David Fairbanks stepped in, wearing a look of concern and relief. "You all right?" he asked softly. Amara nodded, forcing a small smile. "Yes, I am. Just processing," he exhaled, hands tucked in his pockets. "You handled this with extraordinary grace. I'd completely understand if you needed time off or resources for emotional support. We've set up a counseling service for anyone affected by this, but especially for you." Amara paused, tears threatening. "Thank you, David. I might take you up on that. But right now, I want to keep moving forward. There's still a lot of work to do." He chuckled fondly. "There sure is. But Amara, know that you've already justified my faith in you more than that. You've set a new standard for leadership here." With Margaret's sabotage exposed and her threat neutralized, Amara could finally focus on implementing the nationwide rollout of her operations program. The board reaffirmed their support, praising Amara's resilience. Over the next month, Amara and her team scaled the pilot's success across all major distribution centers. The advanced logistics software became the backbone of Fairbanks Consolidated's operations, and early projections showed a significant increase in efficiency and revenue. One Friday afternoon, Amara called a meeting with the entire operations department in the main auditorium. She stood on stage, the bright lights illuminating her as she delivered an address to hundreds of employees and thousands more watching via livestream. "Over the last few months, we've faced challenges not just operationally but personally. Some of us have been tested in ways we never anticipated. But I want everyone here to know we rise above hate when we stand together, committed to excellence and fairness. This operations overhaul is about more than software and numbers. It's about creating a workplace where every voice is heard, where every person can contribute without fear." Applause rang through the auditorium. Amara thanked her team and singled out Mark from it, Paul Bennett, Vanessa Diaz, and others who had been instrumental in making the program a success. Her final words resonated. "We are only as strong as our unity. Let's make Fairbanks Consolidated a place where unity thrives." As the crowd dispersed, people came up to congratulate Amara, to shake her hand, and to share anecdotes of how the changes were improving their daily work. Amara felt a swell of pride tempered by humility. She had become a symbol, and with that symbolic power came responsibility. She silently vowed never to forget the darker chapters that had shaped her journey here. Weeks passed, and word of Fairbanks Consolidated's successful turnaround in operations spread throughout the business community. Industry publications hailed Amara's program as a pioneering model for corporate logistics. Amara was invited to speak at conferences, her reputation swiftly growing. Meanwhile, Margaret Walton's downfall became an infamous cautionary tale. Rumors circulated that she struggled to find another job at her former level, given the scandal attached to her name. Amara received an anonymous letter forwarded from Fairbanks' mailroom, presumably from Margaret, which read simply, "I lost everything. I hope you're happy." Amara felt no happiness in her heart at this. She felt a solemn sense of finality. Margaret had sown seeds of hatred and sabotage. The harvest of her actions was now hers to face. That was karma's way. But Amara never gloated. Despite everything Margaret had done, Amara found pity warring with her lingering hurt. She filed the letter away, uncertain if it required any response. In the end, she chose silence, letting time run its course. Other conspirators faced consequences too, some being demoted or barred from managerial positions in the industry. Amara discovered that one of them, a junior manager named Gil, wrote her an email apologizing for participating in the smear campaign. He admitted he was swayed by Margaret's claims and felt pressured to go along. "I was weak," he wrote. "I see now how wrong it was. I'm truly sorry." Amara read the email more than once, wondering whether to forgive him. In the end, she sent a polite reply, acknowledging his apology but making clear that trust, once broken, would need time to be rebuilt. The final note of karma struck closer to home. Amara learned that Travis, the airport attendant who had once directed her to the economy line, was thriving in the customer service department at Fairbanks. He had soared through training, earning commendations from supervisors. Amara occasionally caught glimpses of him in the cafeteria or passing in the hall. Every time he offered her a respectful nod or a friendly wave. The transformation in Travis was a living reminder that people could change, that prejudice could be unlearned. 3 months post-investigation, Amara's transformation of Fairbanks Consolidated was in full swing. The new logistics software was fully integrated, and monthly metrics consistently showed improvement. Employee engagement surveys revealed higher morale, likely due to the sense of shared purpose Amara had worked hard to cultivate. The shift in culture was evident, even in small gestures, a willingness to listen during meetings, interdepartmental collaboration, a new sense of respect that transcended old biases. Recognizing her accomplishments, David Fairbanks arranged a formal banquet to celebrate the successful implementation. Held in the same Ritz-Carlton ballroom where Amara had once introduced herself, the event brought together executives, managers, and staff from across the country. Speeches were given, awards distributed, and Amara was the guest of honor. Standing at the podium, Amara accepted a plaque for outstanding leadership and operational excellence. She could scarcely believe that just a short while ago she had been publicly humiliated and threatened. She looked over the sea of faces, some friendly, some neutral, all attentive. She considered her words carefully. "Thank you," Amara said, voice resonating through the microphone. "If someone had told me a year ago that I'd be standing here, I'm not sure I would have believed them. I've been tested in more ways than I can count. But I learned that challenges, no matter how daunting, are opportunities to reaffirm who we are and what we stand for." This celebration isn't just about me, it's about every person at Fairbanks Consolidated who chose collaboration over conflict, honesty over deceit, unity over division. That's the real victory. Thundering applause followed. In that moment, Amara felt the weight of her journey, each disappointment, each triumph crystallize into a single truth. She had finally arrived where she was always meant to be. And she had done it on her own terms. This tale shows that every twist of adversity can be a stepping stone toward transformation. Amara Johnson's trials made her realize that true power isn't about titles or corner offices. It's about leading with integrity, even when the world doubts you. She faced down hatred, stepped up for her beliefs, and ultimately built a stronger, more inclusive company. Now, the same people who tried to put her in the economy line can only watch as she takes the helm in first class. If you found Amara's story moving, or if it lit a spark of determination in you, consider joining in the mission of spreading positivity and resilience. Share this video with someone who might need a dose of inspiration. Drop a like if you believe in the power of unity over division, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that celebrate courage in the face of adversity. Let's keep this momentum going.